Hi, my name's Rob Cross and I'm the founder of Muru Leadership. Muru Leadership is a new generation of leadership development that focuses on leading the true human experience. Today I thought I'd talk about the human experience of change, and this follows on from one of our posts about lost in transformation. And that post, if you haven't read it, really brings to life the fact that so many leaders in the midst of the transformation program are becoming lost because the speed and the ferocity of the change that the organisation is needing to implement means that you can't focus on making change personal and making it focused on the leader themselves. And so what I wanted to do is just focus on this concept of the human experience of change. And the reason this is so important is because transformation programs are renowned for failing. And we're talking about over 2/3, if you believe the research, don't actually succeed in delivering the results that they wanted. And when you look at that research, you recognise that actually one of the key components that cause these programs not to deliver is the inability to get people to truly understand, engage with, and embrace the changes being implemented. And so what we want to do from a Muru perspective is really shine the light on this concept of the human experience of change and help people better engage with it so that they can help take their people on that journey. So the human experience of change is a complex one. And it's complex because as human beings, we're not necessarily wired for change. We are actually wired for familiarity. When you look at how the brain's made up, when you look at our physiology, we are wired to look to keep things as stable as we can. And that's because at the core, we are concerned about our own survival. Our own survival as an individual, as a species. And why that becomes really important is because when we look at our lives and what's happening within us or all around us, change is constant. There is everything happening around us. Whether it's just the mere fact that we are getting older each day, we are experiencing a constant stream of change. And amongst that constant stream, what we look for is what I call, from a Muru perspective, islands of stability. We look for things that we can hold on to just give us that element of certainty, that element of confidence that we can remain in control whilst everything else around us is moving. And because we spend so much time at work represents one of the key islands of stability for many of us in organisational life, especially if we're working in a large organisation and we've got a reasonable sort of tenure. We've been there for a few years. Now, when that island of stability gets impacted by change, clearly it becomes unsettling. And that means that we start to engage with a different set of emotions that don't necessarily help us fulfill our full potential and deliver what we potentially need to deliver. From a change perspective, often when we're looking at programs and we're looking at how we engage people in change and help them on that journey, we look at the change curve, which is a very classic piece of theory based on Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. And the change curve shows us that when change happens in our lives, we go through this range of emotions. We start by engaging in denial and don't worry about it, it'll go away. Then we feel angry that somebody's trying to shake up our world and threaten our island of stability. Then we might move into a place of bargaining or absolute resistance. And then hopefully, as we start to recognise that it's not all bad, that there is a way through this, we start to explore and hopefully open up through to acceptance. And that's the concept of the journey of the change curve. But there's a couple of paradoxes in that journey. If we look at the concept of resistance, is that we have a choice. We can either invest our time and energy in really understanding the change and seeking to embrace it, or we can invest our time and energy in resistance, and that's paradox number one. And the second paradox is one of departure. We can either invest our time and energy in really seeking to understand the change and embrace it, or we can invest our time and energy in actually departing from the organisation to escape it altogether. And the reason these two things are paradoxes is because they are a change from our current state in their own right. And so the paradox there is we can either embrace the change or engage in a different form of change for the reasons that we hopefully are conscious of. Then when we really start to dig into this, and from a change practitioner's point of view, we talk about this being a journey of, denial, opposition, through to exploration and acceptance. And we present these wonderful curves to help people recognize that that's the journey that they're on. But actually that curve doesn't represent the true journey. As I'm sure any of you know who've gone through either change in your personal lives or your professional lives, that journey isn't smooth. You bounce all over the place. As more information comes up, as you explore new things, and as you start to really comprehend what the change is and how it's impacting you. And I think as we start to understand that, then we can understand that actually change is messy for us. It's uncomfortable because it threatens some of the fundamental things about who we are as a human being. So from a Muru perspective, when we look at the human experience of change, we start to recognize that there are drivers that sit at the core of who we are, that really get activated at times of change. And this is what we call the human dilemmas. The human dilemmas really help us understand this true human experience of change. And that means that when we think about it from a change management perspective, from an implementation of the transformation program, that we can start to help people through that journey a lot more rapidly and in a safer, kind of more authentic way, if I can call it that. And so the human dilemmas start with mortality, finitude. That's the first one. And what that relates to in a change perspective is that change threatens our sense of security. Will I still have a job? And what will that job be if I do? And if I don't have a job, what does that mean for me? How am I going to pay my mortgage? How am I going to look after my family? It also, the second human dilemma, relates to identity, and so change also impacts that. So if I am going to have a job or not, then how does this impact my sense of identity? How does this help me describe myself in this world? Especially if the identity I've held on to is very important to me based on the job that I was doing. So if that changes, how am I going to deal with that? And the third human dilemma is one about meaning. So as change happens, it causes us to really start to recognize, well, what's important to us. And if that starts to get threatened because of how we perceive the change as being implemented, then we either hold our ground or we start to create new meaning about the change. And the final piece is all about freedom. And this is the final human dilemma. And the concept of freedom is that actually, are we free to choose? And in the midst of change programs, when there's so much going on around us, often it feels like we are having our choice taken away from us, which is not ultimately true, because we still have a choice, as we discovered through the change curve and the paradoxes that sit within it. We have a choice as to whether we engage or we resist, or whether we depart and embark on another change for ourselves. And what wraps the whole model of the human dilemmas together is this concept of isolation, that no matter how the change program is being implemented, or the stakeholder maps or the change impact assessments that are going through, is that each individual has to deal with those choices as a single isolated individual. And yes, they can be supported and informed, but they have to make those choices themselves. And so the true human experience of change is deeply personal, because it's all about that single individual and how they are engaging with and making sense of the change being implemented. So what do we do with this? So how do we help people embrace change in a healthier way, and in a way that helps the organisation deliver on the objectives that the transformation program is seeking to achieve? From a Muru perspective, it's all about getting to the heart of those human dilemmas, helping people connect with them and connect with the fact that they are being activated through the change. And this is where the three questions become hugely powerful. And so whilst the three questions on the surface look quite simple, when you start to engage with them, because they link into the human dilemmas, they help us make sense of the world in a different way. And so the first question in the context of change that you really need to help people answer is this question of, well, who am I? And that's about saying, let's get to the core of the identity that you have now and what that means to you and why that's important to you. And then let's explore what the change is impacting on that, what change it is bringing in terms of the impact on that identity. And if we start to understand that, then we can help people be a lot more conscious about changing the nature of their identity and recognizing that it is actually a choice and feeling confident in that choice. The second question, if that's who I am and that's all about identity, the second question is all about why am I here? And that's about helping people in the context of the change really answer the question of, well, what's important to me? And more importantly, why is it important to me? And if we can help them really understand that, whether it's the nature of the role that they have, how they might do that role, the nature of what the organisation gives them in terms of stability, security, etc., is that we can really help them get to terms with what's important to them and create a different sense of meaning about the change and how that impacts that, and how they can derive more satisfaction and fulfillment through what's important to them through the change that's being implemented. And the final piece is one of how will I lead and live? And this is about saying that actually if question number 1 is about who am I, question number 2 is about why am I here, question number 3 is about saying, so how will I bring that to life? How will I engage with this change in a far more authentic and intentional way? And what we mean by that is that, it is a choice how people engage with this. Often in change programs feel like that choice is being stripped away from them. But if we can give them that choice back, if we can help them exercise that choice in a more conscious way, we can help them be more successful and more fulfilled as they engage in that change. And so the true human experience of change is deeply personal, and it's personal for any of us no matter what change we go through. Yet, yes, it kicks up a range of emotions, as we can see, and each of us will go through that journey of emotions in different ways for the different type of change that we might experience. But ultimately, if we really understand that change elicits a threat response within us, which activates the human dilemmas, then we can bring ourselves back out and start to really create a sense of empowerment and more importantly, ownership by asking the 3 questions. And the 3 questions of who am I in the middle of this, why am I here, and ultimately what's important to me, and how will I lead and live through this change, is really what gives them a sense of power. And more importantly, gives them a sense of ownership over the contribution that they are making, not only in terms of their own response to change, but also in terms of the response to others. If you'd like to learn more about how Muru helps organisations in the midst of transformation programs and change programs, please do get in touch. The 3 questions and the human dilemmas model that we have provides an immense source of power to dig deeper into the personal side of change and the true experience that humans have of change. And by helping them use the 3 questions, we can help them embrace the change far more authentically.